the technical apparatus, but they're feeling this. What has been taken from white men? There's still corporate, judicial, a bank. What has been taken from them? What do they feel like they love? The only thing white people have lost the.
What if I told you, winning an Oscar in Hollywood isn't just about talent anymore? What if the biggest award in the industry comes with a hidden price, a price no one talks about? Because according to D.L. Hughley, what happened to Michael B. Jordan wasn't just a random moment, it was something much deeper. A system, a pattern, a test. Imagine standing on one of the biggest stages in the world, millions watching, and suddenly, a racial slur is shouted at you. Not cut, not censored, not removed, even though it could have been. Now ask yourself, why? Why would a controlled, edited broadcast allow that moment to air? And more importantly, what happens after? Because shortly after that humiliation comes the reward, the applause, the spotlight, the Oscar. Coincidence? Or something else entirely? Some believe Michael B. Jordan handled it with professionalism, stayed calm, stayed silent. But others are asking a much darker question. Was that silence a choice or a requirement? Hollywood has always rewarded talent. But what if it also rewards obedience? What if speaking out costs you everything and staying quiet gives you everything? Once you start connecting the dots, it becomes impossible to ignore. And the real question is, was this just an unfortunate incident? Or proof that the system hasn't changed, it's just gotten smarter? Because once you start connecting the dots, things stop looking like coincidences. They start looking like patterns. And that's exactly what D.L. Hughley was pointing toward. Not just a moment, but a system. A system where certain lines can't be crossed. A system where silence isn't just encouraged, it's rewarded. Let's go back to that night. The stage was set. Lights bright. Cameras rolling. One of the most prestigious award platforms in the world. And standing there were two respected actors, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo. Everything was going as expected. Until it wasn't. Out of nowhere, a voice from the audience. A racial slur. Loud enough to be heard, clear enough to be understood, and shocking enough to freeze the moment. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. This wasn't a live, uncontrolled stream. This was a delayed broadcast. Edited, filtered, managed. Which means someone somewhere had the power to remove that moment entirely. And yet, it stayed. Think about that for a second. In an industry where even the smallest mistakes get cut out, why was this left in? Why allow millions of viewers to witness something so raw, so offensive, so unnecessary? Some quickly pointed to the explanation. The individual responsible reportedly had Tourette's syndrome, an involuntary condition, something beyond their control. And yes, that matters. But here's the part people are questioning. The broadcast wasn't involuntary. That decision? That was deliberate. So again, why? Why keep that moment in? Why let it air? And more importantly, why didn't anyone step in immediately after? Because according to Delroy Lindo himself, there was no instant acknowledgement, no backstage apology, no immediate support, just silence. The show moved on, like nothing had happened. Now imagine being in that position, standing on stage, processing what just happened, and still expected to perform, to smile, to continue, to stay composed. That's not just professionalism. That's pressure. And this is where D.L. Hughley's perspective starts to hit differently. Because to him, this isn't new. He believes Hollywood has always had a pattern when it comes to Black entertainers. First, you're tested. Then, you're pushed. Sometimes, you're even publicly embarrassed. And if you pass that test, if you don't react, if you don't speak out, if you play along, then comes the reward, the recognition, the opportunities, the golden statue. Now think about what happened next. Not long after that incident, Michael B. Jordan wins one of the biggest awards of his career. Best Actor. A moment that should be purely celebratory. A dream come true. Years of hard work, finally recognized. And when he stepped up to accept that award, he did what many would call the right thing. He stayed gracious, humble, respectful, He thanked those who came before him, honored legends like Sidney Poitier, Denzel Washington, and others who paved the way. It was a powerful speech. But for some, it raised another question. Not about what he said, but what he didn't say. There was no mention of the incident. No calling it out. No confrontation. Just silence. Now, to be clear, that silence can be interpreted in many ways. Some see strength, control, professionalism. Others see something else. Strategy. Because in Hollywood, your voice can be your power. But it can also be a risk. Speaking out can cost you roles, deals, connections, entire opportunities. And staying silent? Well, that can keep everything intact. This isn't just speculation. History has shown us glimpses of this pattern before. Take Halle Berry, for example. When she won her Oscar in 2002, it was a historic moment. A breakthrough. A symbol of change. She stood on that stage representing a future where more doors would open. More stories would be told. More voices would be heard. But what happened after? The roles didn't come the way people expected. The momentum slowed. And the system didn't shift as much as it promised. Or look at Lupita Nyong'o. Another Oscar winner. Another powerful performance. Another moment that should have changed everything. But instead, she spoke about being offered similar roles again and again. Limited narratives. Repeated patterns. So when D.L. Hughley talks about a system, he's not just talking about one night. He's talking about a cycle. A structure that rewards, but also controls. And when you place Michael B. Jordan's situation into that context, it starts to look different. The incident. The silence. The award. The timing. Individually, they might seem unrelated. But together, they raise questions. Uncomfortable ones. Because if this really is a pattern, then the biggest question isn't about what happened. It's about why it keeps happening. And whether anyone is willing to break it. Because breaking it comes at a cost. And not everyone is willing to pay that price. Because the truth is, breaking the system has never been easy. And history has shown us what happens to those who try. There's always been a price for stepping out of line. A price for being too loud. Too real. Too unapologetic. And sometimes, that price isn't paid immediately. Sometimes, it shows up later. In lost opportunities. In closed doors. In silence from an industry that once celebrated you. That's why this moment involving Michael B. Jordan feels bigger than just one incident. Because when you zoom out, you start to see the parallels. The patterns repeating themselves in different forms. Take sports, for example. Legends like Michael Jordan were once criticized for staying neutral on social issues. There's even that famous line, "Republicans buy sneakers too." At the time, some saw it as smart. Strategic. Others saw it as silence. A choice to protect the brand over the message. Fast forward to today, and the same conversation still exists. Different industry. Same pressure. Stay neutral. Stay marketable. Stay safe. Because the moment you step outside that line, everything can change. And that's what makes the BAFTA incident even more uncomfortable. Because according to reports, the audience had already been warned. They knew someone with Tourette's syndrome was present. They were prepared for possible outbursts. So here's the question. If the production team knew in advance, if they had a delay, if they had full editorial control, then how did that specific moment make it through? And not just make it through, but remain untouched? It forces you to consider a possibility most people don't want to entertain. That maybe it wasn't just a mistake. Maybe it was allowed. Now that's a heavy claim. And to be fair, there's no official confirmation of anything intentional. In fact, the organizers later issued an apology. They took responsibility, admitted their safeguards failed, said it should have never happened. But even that raises another question. Why does accountability always come after the damage is done? Why is the response always reactive and not preventive? Because by the time the apology comes out, the moment has already gone viral. The clip has already been shared. The narrative has already taken shape. And the impact? That can't be undone. Meanwhile, the conversation shifts. Instead of focusing on the system, people start debating the reaction. Was it handled correctly? Should more have been said? Did Michael B. Jordan do the right thing by staying composed? And just like that, the spotlight moves away from the root issue, right back to the individual. And that's another pattern. Shift the focus. Control the narrative. Keep the system intact. Because as long as the conversation stays divided, nothing really changes. Now, let's talk about something even deeper. Representation. For decades, Hollywood has been criticized for how it tells stories. Who gets to tell them? And more importantly, how those stories are framed. Yes, progress has been made. More diversity. More inclusion. More recognition. But even today, there are limits. Invisible lines that aren't supposed to be crossed. Stories that are welcomed, and stories that are quietly pushed aside. And success? It often comes within those boundaries. That's why some people looked at Michael B. Jordan's Oscar win and celebrated it, while others analyzed it. Not the performance, not the talent, but the context. Because even in celebration, there are questions. Why are there still so few Black Best Actor winners in nearly a century of the Academy Awards? Why do certain roles get recognized, while others are overlooked? And why does it sometimes feel like you have to do more, be more, prove more, just to receive the same acknowledgement? These aren't easy questions, and they don't have simple answers. But they're part of a much larger conversation, one that goes beyond a single award show, one that touches the very foundation of the industry. And then there's the personal side of it. Because behind all the analysis, all the theories, all the debates, there's still a human being at the center of it. A person who worked for years to reach that moment. A person who stood on that stage and chose how to respond in real time. And that choice? It matters. Because not everyone would have handled it the same way. Some might have called it out immediately. Others might have walked off stage. Some might have refused to continue. But he didn't. He stayed. He finished the presentation. He kept it professional. And later, he stood on another stage, accepting one of the highest honors in his career. Calm, composed, focused. And maybe that was his way of winning. Not just the award, but the moment. Because sometimes, power doesn't look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like control. Like choosing when to speak and when not to. But here's the thing. That kind of control can also be misunderstood. Because from the outside, silence can look like agreement, like acceptance, like compliance. And that's where the divide happens. Two completely different interpretations of the same moment. One sees strength. The other sees submission. So which one is it? Was it professionalism or pressure? Was it strategy or silence? Was it just an unfortunate incident or part of something bigger? At this point, it's not just about answers. It's about perspective. Because what you see in this situation often depends on what you already believe about the system. If you believe Hollywood has changed, then this was likely just a mistake. An unfortunate moment that slipped through. Handled poorly, but not intentionally. But if you believe the system has simply evolved, become more polished, more controlled, then this looks very different. It looks calculated, structured, designed. And that's why this conversation isn't going away anytime soon. Because it touches on something deeper than just one event. It challenges the idea of fairness, of equality, of how success is truly earned, and whether everyone is playing the same game or following different rules. In the end, maybe the most important question isn't what happened that night. Maybe it's this. If the same situation happened again, would anything be different? Or would the outcome look exactly the same? Or would the outcome look exactly the same? That question is what makes this entire situation so unsettling. Because deep down, a lot of people already think they know the answer. And that answer isn't comforting. Because if nothing changes, then moments like this aren't accidents. They're expectations. They're part of the environment. Part of the unspoken rules that everyone understands, but no one openly talks about. And that brings us back to what D.L. Hughley was really trying to say. This isn't about attacking Michael B. Jordan. It's not about questioning his talent, or even his choices in that moment. It's about looking at the bigger picture. The structure behind the spotlight. Because Hollywood has always been more than just entertainment. Its influence, its power, its narrative control, and the people who succeed within it often have to learn how to navigate that power very carefully. Sometimes that means speaking out, and sometimes it means staying quiet. But the problem is, when silence becomes the safer option, it also becomes the expected one. And over time, that expectation turns into culture. A culture where controversy is managed, not eliminated. Where difficult conversations are delayed, not addressed. Where optics matter more than accountability. And when you look at the BAFTA moment through that lens, it feels less like a mistake and more like a reflection. A reflection of how the system responds under pressure. Because think about it. Everything that happened afterward followed a familiar pattern. The incident, the reaction, the apology, the clarification, and then the gradual shift of attention. Until eventually, the story fades, replaced by the next headline, the next controversy, the next moment, and the cycle continues. But every once in a while, a moment sticks. Not because of what happened on the surface, but because of what it represents underneath. And for many people, this was one of those moments. Because it forced a conversation that goes beyond one actor, one award, one night. It opened the door to questions about fairness, about representation, about the invisible rules that shape visible success, and whether those rules have really changed or just become harder to see. Now here's where things get even more complicated. Because not everyone agrees on the interpretation. Some people genuinely believe this was just an unfortunate situation. A mistake in production. A failure in judgment. Nothing more. And that perspective matters too. Because not every controversy is a conspiracy. Not every incident is intentional. Sometimes, things really do go wrong. But the reason this situation feels different is because it doesn't exist in isolation. It connects to a history. A pattern that people have been pointing out for years. A pattern where progress is made, but limits still exist. Where success is possible, but conditions still apply. And that's why this conversation isn't simple. Because it lives in that gray area. Between truth and perception. Between intention and impact. Between what we're told and what we choose to believe. And in that gray area, everyone sees something different. Some see growth. Others see control. Some see opportunity. Others see restriction. And maybe both can be true at the same time. Because systems don't always operate in extremes. They evolve. They adapt. They find new ways to maintain balance while appearing to change. And that's what makes them so difficult to challenge. Because on the surface, everything looks fine. Awards are being given. Diversity is being celebrated. Progress is being highlighted. But underneath, questions still remain. And those questions don't go away just because the spotlight moves on. They stay, waiting for the next moment, the next incident, the next conversation. And when that moment comes, everything resurfaces. All at once. That's why what happened with Michael B. Jordan isn't just a headline. It's a reference point. A moment people will come back to when discussing how the industry operates, how it responds, how it protects itself, and how individuals navigate within it. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about Hollywood. It's about power dynamics. About who gets to speak, who chooses not to, and why. It's about understanding that success, especially at the highest level, often comes with trade-offs. Visible or not. Acknowledged or not. And that doesn't take away from the achievement. It doesn't erase the talent. It doesn't diminish the hard work. But it does add complexity. It adds layers to the story. Layers that aren't always comfortable to explore, but are necessary to understand. So where does that leave us? Somewhere in between. Between admiration and analysis. Between celebration and skepticism. Between what we see and what we question. And maybe that's exactly where this conversation needs to be. Not rushed to a conclusion. Not forced into a single narrative, but allowed to exist, to evolve, to be debated. Because the moment we stop asking questions is the moment nothing changes. So now it comes back to you. What do you see when you look at this situation? Do you see a talented actor, handling a difficult moment with grace? Or do you see someone navigating a system that rewards silence over resistance? Do you believe this was just an unfortunate incident or something more calculated? Because your answer says just as much about the system as it does about the moment itself. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. Not the award, not the incident, but the conversation it started. A conversation that isn't going away anytime soon. So the real question is, are we finally paying attention? Or are we just watching like we always do? So now it's your turn to weigh in. This isn't just a story about an Oscar or a BAFTA moment. It's a story about a system, a pattern, and the invisible rules that shape Hollywood and the entertainment industry. Michael B. Jordan's journey shows what it really takes to succeed at the highest level: talent, hard work, and navigating a world that rewards silence and compliance. But is that fair? Should it be that way? We want to hear from you. What do you think about the BAFTA incident? Was it an unfortunate mistake, or is it proof of a bigger system at work? Could Michael B. Jordan have handled it differently, or was staying composed the smartest move he could make? How do you feel about the fact that sometimes success comes with trade-offs, and speaking up can cost careers? Comment below your thoughts. Don't hold back. Share your opinion, and let's spark a real conversation about representation, power, and accountability in Hollywood. And if you agree that these patterns need to be called out, share this video with your friends and followers. The more people who see it, the more this conversation grows. Make sure to hit that like button if you're shocked or inspired by Michael B. Jordan's resilience. Subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated on the latest Hollywood stories, award controversies, and insider truths that others don't want you to see. Your voice matters. Join the discussion, and let's uncover the real story behind the glitz and glamour. The conversation doesn't end here. It's just getting started.